So you just watched the new season of JJK and you're thinking that you want to make yourself a sword like Maki Zenin's. Well, here is how you can easily do it. This thing is pretty much made of mostly cardboard. Starting off, like all of the different props that I make, I do my sketch first. I have 2 pieces of printer paper taped together. So I'm sketching everything out. It's important that you do have this. It makes it so much easier. This is pause now, take a screenshot, zoom in. You will be able to see the different measurements, at least for the regular sword itself. The handle ended up being about 6 inches. So after that, we're gonna flip it over. And I'm using an oil pastel on the back end of the piece of paper. That is going to help it transfer over, and we're going to be making 3 different transfers. So you flip that over, put it onto your piece of cardboard, and I did have to glue 2 pieces of cardboard together to get a long enough blade for this. Sketch that out, so just tracing over all of the lines that we already went over. There's the first one, and we're going to do that 2 more times. Then after that is down the second time, so again, tracing over the lines. Make sure you're pressing, but don't press too hard because you don't want to press through the paper. Typically making an additional copy is always a good thing to do, but I normally just do it on the original. Then we're going to cut this out. The cardboard that I used is very, very, very thick, and you will need heavy duty cardboard to be able to do this. For the first 2 that I cut out the entire design, and then the third one that I cut out, that one was cut smaller and that was used in the center of it. So you'll see that in just a little bit. Then I ended up cutting this out so I could figure out where that line was going to go. I probably should have traced that before. This was for the third piece along with also the other 2, just to have that line on the edge. So I'm not cutting fully through it, at least for 2 pieces, but I am scoring it. So I'm only cutting through the top layer of the cardboard. Then after that has been cut on 2 of the pieces, not all 3, I'm pressing that in, and later on I used a spoon to further flatten that, so you will end up seeing that in a little bit. For this third piece, what I'm doing is I'm actually cutting off that entire piece there, and that's going to be the centerpiece. That's just going to give it more stability. And here I'm using the spoon just to flatten those edges even more. And again, this cardboard's pretty thick. It's a little bit harder to work with. It's not going to be as flat as you want it to, so you'll go over the edges later with some paper. Then I'm using some glue here. I'm using wood glue. Wood glue on paper, one of the best things that you can use. Same thing with cardboard. It adheres extremely well, and it's a very, very, very strong bond. Now that centerpiece is in place. I pressed it down. And after it was fully lined up to where I wanted it to be, I cut into the third layer of cardboard and I took a chopstick and placed it in there. That is going to make it so I can connect the bottom handle, which I will be making a little bit later on in this tutorial, and just have it so it can stay in place properly. If you do want it to be more sturdy, double it up or use something that is, well, not a chopstick, a little bit stronger than that. Now some glue on the other side. So after I put a very generous amount of wood glue onto that side, along with also around the chopstick, I took the third piece of cardboard that I had there, lined it up, pressed it down, and then I took these sides, put glue, and pressed it even further. This is to create the edge there, so you do want all of that to get together. You might need to put maybe a couple of clips just to keep things clamped in place, and yeah, it will take a bit of time for that to dry. Now for the edge here, I have a brown paper bag that I cut. I'm lining that up on the edge. This is just going to give a smoother edge to it. Of course, keep in mind, paper is going to have a lot of crumples, a lot of wrinkles, but that is okay because after we have that edge, so put that onto the other side too with some glue, line that up, and then cut it in a straight line after it has been down. The paper doesn't really fully and totally matter because after it's painted, we do end up adding some hot glue to it, and it's more along the lines of a weathered blade. If you wanted something that was a lot smoother, you probably don't want to use cardboard to craft it with. Then for the top, to hide the different layers, I'm doing the same exact thing, adding some of that paper bag to the top of it, cut it, made sure it was good. I'm also smoothing out this side here by adding another piece of a paper bag, which I cut to size and went around the edges later. This is for the handle. What I'm doing is I'm going up each and every one of the lines on the piece of cardboard here. I'm using a blade to score it, and then I'm rolling it up. this is going to pretty much make it so you can easily roll the cardboard and it's not going to have as many folds in it. Though granted, again, it's not going to fully matter because you can hide that with some tape or also some paper. It depends on what you want to do. Then I'm adding a generous amount of glue, rolling it back up. And from what I remember, this piece was about 14 inches long and about 6 inches width-wise. It all really depends on what your hand size is going to be. I made this actually a little bit bigger than I probably should have. Then I put glue onto the chopstick there, lined that up, held it in place. For the seams, normally when I make different handles or other things like this, I try to hide where that seam is. It just keeps everything together as well. So I took a piece of a paper bag, stuck it down, hid the seams just like that. This is what the hilt piece is going to look like. So there's the measurements for it. Take a screenshot, zoom in. That is what I used for all of the measurements of it. So after you have taken a screenshot of that, then we're going to do the same exact thing that we did for the blade, which is we take that, transfer it to a piece of cardboard, cut it out, and assemble. So there we go. We're going to take it over on the opposite side, use an oil pastel. You could also use chalk too. Flip it over, tape it down, and then sketch out 2 of those. For the top square piece, well, rectangle piece, I only ended up sketching out 1 of them. Then we're going to cut all of those pieces out. Take your time with this. Some of these edges are a little hard to get out, and since we're using some pretty thick cardboard, take your time. For this piece here, this is actually going to go in the center between both of those different parts that we made and cut out. That's going to keep them separated, also just give it a bit more stability as well. Now I'm bending these pieces before I glue everything together. Those little pieces on the sides are going to act as a tab. That little rounded piece that we glued before will go into the center. So put a generous amount of glue it down, hold for a couple of minutes together, and then bend the pieces around it so they're touching. You could also use hot glue as well too. Just wood glue works a lot better and is just going to keep everything together. Now, I used 2 toothpicks to get this in place. I know I probably should have used a little bit more to secure it, so you might want to use, again, another chopstick to do so, or something else. Took those, lined it up, held it in place, and then I took a piece of cardboard to build that up slightly, glued that down, after I just made sure everything was fully and totally going to stick, of course. Put glue around it, and then glued another piece of cardboard down. That pretty much kept this piece fully and totally in place. It wasn't really going anywhere, which was great. So it was a nice stable end to this, especially because, well, this whole thing is made pretty much of cardboard. Then it was good to spray paint. So I primed it with some matte base. Looks a little bit glossy because of course it's wet. And for the actual sword, I used a metallic color that I had. I think it's a mirror-like finish from what I remember for what I have. And when you're spray painting, make sure to go in layers. Don't just put it down all at once because it will run and it'll look kind of gross. For the back end, I just spray painted it black. Let everything dry, which cardboard does take a decent amount of time for it to dry. And after it was dry, I went and started to dry brush on with some black to make it look a bit more aged, weathered, and just add more character, of course, to the blade. After that layer was dried, which, of course, take your time with this, you want to go along the entirety of the blade if you do decide to add some weathering to it. I went along where these lines were, added some white, and I also did follow up on a couple of different areas with just a small bit of black. Then I wrapped the handle with some tape. You could just leave it as this, but I did glue on some paper after the fact, which you'll see a little bit later on. So after that handle has been wrapped, I added some fake fur. This was for an Inosuke cosplay that I'm working on. Folded the 2 sides of fur together, made sure it was fully and totally secured. I did use a hot glue gun for this, which is probably the best for you to end up using rather than wood glue because it's just not going to fully work. Then to add some texture, I used the hot glue gun to go across create these kind of just random different designs, patterns, whatever you want to call it. And after that had cooled on both sides, then I added some more weathering to it. So I dry sponged on some black, kind of wiped it across where the hot glue is. And the cool thing with hot glue is normally when you paint over it, the paint is going to stick to it pretty well. So it just all blends in. And then after I was done adding that, I went into some of the deeper areas on there, added some more shadow, used my finger to blend that. And pretty much at this point, after everything had dried, this blade was done. This is also a great tutorial for if you want to just make a cosplay sword or whatever you want to do. If I make this again, which I probably will, I'll add more of a bend to it. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Bye!